Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Unplugged, a show dedicated to the youth. My name is Mohamed Raza Nathani, and I'm the head of WF Youth. If you have not seen our first episode, I urge you to go watch it. As you can see, today we are not sitting in a professional studio because today we are having a casual, down-to-earth conversation with one of the most humble person I've met. He's a historian, he's a PhD doctorate, and as we speak, he's leading the International Center for Advanced Islamic Research, also known as ICAIR, under World Federation. Moreover, he has got an immense knowledge of AI and technology. Let's just get to it. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Mohamed Raza. I'm good, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Alhamdulillah, it's always a pleasure to see you. Sheikh, in today's digital age, the fastest way to find information or clarify a concept is often by conducting a search on ChatGPT. People increasingly rely on ChatGPT because it consistently provides responses without rejecting questions or highlighting its limitation. As new ideas and perspectives spread across the world, many youth they question their faith from multiple angles. These topics are not often discussed on the member, and also they might think it's too trivial to discuss that with a scholar. Also, the fear of criticism from scholar may lead to that individual go and seek answers from Google or maybe ChatGPT. In your opinion, how reliable is ChatGPT for Islamic knowledge?
I think this is an excellent question. We've seen in the last 2 years an explosion in artificial intelligence. I mean, this is completely changing the world of not just information, but technology as we know it. I mean, at the moment, artificial intelligence is something new. It's something that still a lot of people don't really know much about. But I think in the next few years, it is going to become ubiquitous in the same way that electricity is ubiquitous. So, when we talk about, for example, a computer or a television or a fridge, we don't talk about them being powered by electricity as a feature. You don't go and say, oh, I bought this new fridge, it's powered by electricity. I think it's going to be the same with AI in the next 5 to 10 years, everything will have some form of artificial intelligence built into it. It's already, it's already in our phones, in our computers, in the software that we use. It's everywhere, and so it's only natural that it's going to find its way into our religious spaces as well, whether it's sort of the mosque or online, sort of online discussions, research, all of that. It's changing everything. How reliable is it as a source of Islamic knowledge? The funny thing is, even though AI is very new, this question isn't new, because before ChatGPT, before we asked, is ChatGPT a reliable source for Islamic knowledge, we were asking, is Google a reliable source for Islamic knowledge? And the answer is, well, it depends. In the same way, before Google, we might have actually asked, is Sheikh so and so or Sayyid so and so a reliable source of Islam? Is this person, is Mullah so and so a reliable source of Islamic knowledge, right? So this isn't a new problem we're facing. We have always, even before there was the internet, even before there was phones, even before there was a printing press, the question of where you get your knowledge from has always been of the utmost importance. In fact, for us as Shia Muslims, this is the most fundamental question, right? Going right back to the time of the Prophet, salawatullahi alayhi, and the Imams alayhim salam. Where do you get your knowledge from? I know that we sort of think of AI as being this new scary thing, but the question that you just asked, is it a reliable source of AI knowledge? This isn't a new question. We've been asking this question since the beginning. With that in mind, let me turn to sort of AI now, right? Because if AI is, it's going to be everywhere, it's going to be in everything. What does that mean for religious questions, for the youth who have questions about their faith? There are huge advantages to sort of tools like Google and ChatGPT, because maybe there's a question that you're afraid to ask, right? Like you said, I don't know about you, but there are questions that I don't want to ask my parents. There are questions I don't want to ask, the Maulana at the mosque. There are certain things that I want to know about, but I don't want other people to know I want to know about. So, that's one of the great things about Google. You can ask a question and not feel embarrassed that this is something you don't know. But then the question becomes, okay, if you're asking ChatGPT, where is it getting its information from? And I think one of the challenges we have is that we don't actually have access to the data that ChatGPT has been built on. Because, the thing is with AI, it's all about the data that artificial intelligence has been trained on. So when they build these AI models, they train them on just billions of data points. Like a huge amount of information has just been given to these very advanced computer systems to learn from. They've been trained on this training data, but we don't have access to that training data, so we don't always know where the information is coming from. Now that's changed a little bit in the last few months, because whether it's ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Claude or Gemini, all of the main AI models now are able to search the internet. So sometimes if I go and ask ChatGPT, according to Sayyid Sistani, how do I do Eid prayers, it can actually go to sistani.org and look that up and give me an answer. So that's one part of the puzzle. It can go and find information, but I think the really important thing people have to remember is ChatGPT. I know we call it artificial intelligence. I know it's like we're chatting with it. It feels like we're talking to a person. It's actually not. It's not genuinely intelligent. It's just very, very good at finding what you want. It's very, very good at figuring out what you want from it. That being said, it has no way of discerning truth, whether something is true or not. So that's where we get, people talk about like hallucinations, which is basically when the AI just makes stuff up. So a big risk is, how do we know that the AI is giving us accurate information? And unfortunately, my experience is that it's very hit and miss. So for me as an expert, I can go onto ChatGPT, I can ask a question, and I can go, oh, that's really cool. It's figured all this stuff out. But then there'll be details in there that aren't wrong. So even if you get something that looks right, it will get some of the details wrong. And that's where you have to be careful, because if you're not a specialist, you can't tell when the AI is giving you, inaccurate information. But this is something that isn't going away.
Brilliant. I think you answered more than half of my questions. I don't know what to ask you next. But
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is a topic that this is a topic that's really important to me, because I've been watching AI grow over the years, and I've always been fascinated by what we can do with computers. I mean, we're having this conversation now thanks to the magic of computers and the internet. And I think there's tremendous potential there, but also tremendous danger. And so that's why, so I apologize if if I've got a lot to say on this.
perfect, perfect. But my next question was, are our Islamic research institutes or the offices of Marja, are they uploading any sort of Islamic values, history, or cultural knowledge onto the AI database or blockchain? I can understand, like, you are saying that ChatGPT merely does go to that website and fetch that information and trim it down as per your needs and everything. But is there any way where they can go and provide that sort of input so that it becomes reliable for the user? It could be me, it could be you, it could be anyone else outside the community.
So there's a couple of ways of looking at this, right? On the one hand, now that these major sort of AI platforms have got a search function, we could be looking at something like SEO, search engine optimization, whereby we optimize websites to be accessed and used by AI as a reference material. But there are other ways too, because remember what I said a moment ago about hallucinations. So hallucinations have been a problem from the very beginning with AI. Again, though, I mean, we call it we call it a hallucination, but if you talk to a person and they give you inaccurate information, they're not hallucinating. They're just they either don't know or they're making it up. And so AI has the same. So AI has the same problem. I mean, when we go and look at hadith narrators, for example, as Hausa students, and we're sort of doing Rijal criticism, what are we really asking? What we're asking is this information that's been provided through an accurate medium? And I think, generally speaking, with AI, the hallucination problem isn't going away. So even if you have websites and resources and you give data to AI, which improves the quality of the data, that's just one part of the equation. How to make sure that the AI isn't hallucinating is another problem, and there is a solution to that. So kind of a big thing in the AI industry at the moment is called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. And what that means is that you take an AI like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or DeepSeek, and you hook it up to a database, and you tell the AI that I'm going to ask you a question, and I only want you to answer from this database that I've given you. I don't want you to go and get information from else. Just you have to get the answer from this database. And obviously, I'm really simplifying that, but there are lots of ways of setting that up to make sure that the AI is only looking in that database. So what some people have been doing now is actually building Islamic AIs with databases based on Shia books. And so there's one in particular I'm thinking of, which is hujja.org, which is still in its testing phase, but it looks really, looks really interesting. It sort of does things like ICAIR, history, fiqh, all these different branches. But the idea behind this is that it is only answering from a selected sort of body of material, and that's how you prevent the AI from hallucinating. Even then, there are always going to be questions of reliability. So I don't think we're at the stage where we can say that AI is going to replace the role of a human expert. And actually, if we look at other areas, for example, whether it's medicine, whether it's academic research, whether it's law, there are lots of areas where AI can be used. Like if you look at something like drafting a legal contract, for example, or diagnosing an illness, there are studies out there that show AI is really powerful. Like if you, they did a study where they found that an AI was better at diagnosing healthcare, diagnosing health issues than a doctor. Now, that's not the same as saying that we should give we shouldn't just sort of say, okay, the computer knows better, let's do whatever the computer says. But imagine if you gave a doctor that tool, how that would streamline his process. The AI can look for things, can look for more things, can process more data than a doctor can. So then the AI can come up with a diagnosis. In terms of what you do with that diagnosis, though, that can be given to the doctor. So it's almost like what we're really looking at is not so much AI replacing experts. It's about AI helping experts do their job better. And I think that's the ideal, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to sort of just entrust our lives to a computer to make decisions for us. We want to be in a situation where we have people who are experts in their field. Because like I said, if the AI is giving me faulty information, for example, let's say you have a medical AI that gives a faulty diagnosis. A doctor will be able to see that there's something off with that diagnosis. He'll go, hold on a minute, let me double check that. But if it's me and the AI tells me that I have Ebola, I'm going to go, oh my God, I have Ebola. Just like when, how they say you shouldn't Google your symptoms. I mean, the same rule applies with AI, but even more, because when you ask an AI, the AI is so confident it knows the answer. Sometimes you ask an AI a question and it gives you this answer that is complete nonsense, but it sounds absolutely confident about it. It is convinced that this is the answer, and you go, hold on, you sort of type back and say, hold on, what about this? And it goes, oh, that's right, I'm so sorry. No, this is the right answer. And it's wrong again. So the challenge with AI is you're talking to something that is programmed to be extremely confident about whatever it's giving you, but it has no idea whether what it's giving you is accurate or not. And that's why you need a human in the loop. You need an expert there to help, to oversee the AI. Now, does that mean that a non-expert can't use AI? No, it just means that they shouldn't base everything on what the AI tells them. Just in the same way you wouldn't base you wouldn't think that a Google search can replace an actual doctor or an actual lawyer or an expert in anything. Sorry, but I realized I digressed. I went off on a bit of a digression there, because you were asking what an Islamic Research Institute's doing. A brief answer to that as well. At ICAIR, we are actively looking into how to build systems like this for AI. So we've got a couple of projects that we're working on, exploring how we can make AI safe, reliable, and ethical to use from an Islamic point of view. And also, I would say that scholars in the Hawza, so scholars in Najaf and Qum, based on conversations I've had with them, are very, very interested in AI and its applications. And they are also sort of looking at how they can use it in a way that is safe, reliable, and ethical to bolster their Islamic research and also to bolster the kind of Islamic services they can offer to the community. So it's really exciting. And I would say that everyone all over the world is looking at AI very seriously and how to use it in an Islamic context, which is really encouraging.
Absolutely. I agree to it. Basically, what you mean to say that if you don't restrict the AI while giving the responses, it could blabber anything in confidence. So it could be basis, it would depend on the user, whether the user is actually an expert in that field so that he can catch the mistakes, or maybe he will accept everything. But that all comes to one point where you use specific prompts to limit the responses from AI. So is there any source or is there any sort of database where we can look after for using appropriate prompts to limit the responses of the AI to that specific text or specific references?
I mean, I would say, so at the moment, setting up a sort of a retrieval augmented generation kind of system isn't something that just anyone can do. I think it's getting easier where you can give it a database, but there are a whole load of engineering questions in there. Like, how does it access the database? How do you help the AI find the right material in that database? And there's lots of different methods for that. So it's still quite technical. So I don't think there is a way for a person who isn't a computer scientist and isn't a subject matter expert to just go out of the box and build something like this. I think there are ways in which you can make your search results more reliable. But at the end of the day, the key thing about AI, the key thing to remember about AI is it's a tool. So the thing with the tool is it depends who's using the tool. A tool. So if for example, if I would say a knife in the hands of a master chef is one thing. The knife in the hands of a 3-year-old is something completely different. So we have to look at AI in that term. So the way in which we use AI, we have to ask ourselves, how qualified is the person using AI to use that tool? And don't get me wrong, AI can help a lot. So, for example, I am not a computer scientist. I'm not a computer programmer. I know a little bit of coding, but I can use AI to get better at coding. I can use AI to help me code things better, right? That being said, though, I would never sort of then go and apply for a job as a computer scientist because I know that I have AI to help me. Because obviously, someone who's actually a trained computer scientist has experience and knowledge and expertise that goes beyond what the AI can provide me. They actually know, they understand how to think in big picture terms. AI, and another way to think about AI as a tool is predictive text. So I realize this seems like a funny concept, but the way AI functions is actually very similar to the way predictive text functions on our phones. So when you're writing a message on WhatsApp or you're sending an iMessage and you've got these suggestions for what the next word is going to be. And a lot of the time it saves time because it knows what the next word is and you just tap it and it pops up on the screen and you've saved yourself maybe half a second of typing. You've saved yourself a few button presses. Sometimes, though, you're typing and it clearly has no idea where the conversation's going because it's making all these really unhelpful suggestions. AI is a bit like that. I mean, if you actually look at the way AI functions, it is simply, at a very basic level, it is just trying to predict what it's supposed to say in response to the prompt. So it's just like a very big, very complicated version of predictive text. And I wouldn't trust the predictive text on my iPhone to give me a medical diagnosis. I certainly wouldn't trust predictive text on my iPhone to give me a fatwa or to give me religious advice or spiritual guidance. It can be a tool, but that is what it is at the end of the day.
But looking at the popularity of AI increasing, anyone can just make a search on any of the AI tools and feel that they are the most knowledgeable person because they can get no answers to every of the questions because this AI tool, they don't interrupt for any of the prompts that you give them. They just start blabbering everything.
Yes.
They don't say that we are not capable of doing this thing or we have limited research on it. They just say it in confidence. So what would be those consequences where everybody will be in their delusion that they are the most knowledgeable person, but in real life, the real knowledge lies on their phone. Any of the questions which you'll ask them, they'll just go back to their phone, they'll ask the chat GPT, and they'll come back to you. So, what would be this consequences if all of this comes true?
I mean, again, this isn't a new problem. It's just a more advanced version of an old problem. So again, in the old days, so when I say the old days, I mean like medieval times. So before we had electricity, there was a problem with religious students. So students who were sort of aspiring to become scholars, who instead of going to study a book, so the idea in a traditional Hausa education is you're supposed to study a book with a scholar. So it's not just about the text itself. It's not just because the way you and I think about a book today in the 21st century is, I go and pick up a book and I read it and now I know about now I know this topic. The idea is that the book is sort of like a self-contained repository of knowledge. But in the classical Islamic tradition, that isn't the case. The idea is that you study a book with a teacher and the teacher explains the book in such a way that brings out, lata'if or subtleties in that book that you as an inexperienced reader won't be able to prize out for yourself. And so there is this very dangerous illusion of knowledge that comes, someone in the old days, it would be if one of these students, for example, instead of going to study this book with a teacher, would just go and buy a copy of the book and read it themselves. And then they think, I've understood it. So, they go and read a book on fiqh and they think, okay, I understand fiqh now. But the point is, they understand fiqh at the surface level, but but they don't necessarily know how to bring all that together in a holistic way, how to cross-reference it with other disciplines. That takes training, that takes time. And I think, again, ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or DeepSeek or Google, for that matter, are all useful tools, but they are no replacement for actually learning how to think. And there is a danger here that people will, and this is already happening, that people will surrender their thinking capacities. They will surrender their own ability to think, to reason, to learn to an AI. Because, we as humans, we always want to take the path of least resistance. If I want to get from point A to point B, I want to go in a straight line whenever possible. I want to get there as quickly as possible. It's a bit like, you drive, if I want to drive from London to the north of England, I'm going to get on the M1. I'm going to go down the motorway because that is the quickest way of getting there. The sad thing is that when you take that approach, you miss out on seeing the landscape, on seeing the countryside. You don't get a sense of the geography of the places you're traveling through. You're just zipping through. And this is a feature of modern life. It's a feature of capitalism where every second counts, every penny counts. We want to do everything in the cheapest, quickest, most efficient way possible. But in doing so, we lose a lot of the texture. We lose a lot of the color. You lose a lot of the nuances that are there. And, to be honest, though, again, even 20, 30 years ago, before the internet was a thing, people would read one book on a subject and then they would act as though they were experts on the subject. So the problem isn't the tool. The problem isn't ChatGPT. The problem isn't Google. The problem isn't books. The problem is people. It's like there's this famous line of poetry from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, where he says, the illness is inside of you, but you do not see. The cure is inside of you, but you are not aware. And I feel that so many of these problems, when we talk about, every generation, there's a new piece of technology that everyone's worried about. Whether it, like in the, maybe in the 80s it was television, then in the 90s it was computers, then in the 2000s it was the internet, and then 2010s it was Google, and now it's like Chat GPT or what have you. However you want to sort of build that timeline. New technology always is blamed for creating problems. But the real problem, the real underlying problem, is people's relationship with that technology, is the way people engage with that technology, the way people use that technology. The same with that knife. If someone stabs someone with a knife, it's not the knife's fault. It's the person holding the knife. And so we need to ask ourselves, like, how are we going to hold this technology? How are we going to use this technology? And at the end of the day, if someone wants to take shortcuts and get quick, easy answers and not have to put any sort of effort in, that isn't the problem. Isn't the technology? The problem is how it's being used. Because you can use AI in a way that augments your thinking, that deepens your thinking. You can use AI. By the way, you can tell an AI, I need you to challenge me on this. I need you to point out. You can tell the AI, I need you to point out flaws in my argument, and the AI will start doing that for you. But I think most people don't tell the AI, hey, I have this idea. Tell me everything that could be wrong with it. But imagine if we use AI that way. That's quite useful. Some people use AI to talk through problems. So, what you just said now about sort of, there are questions that we don't want to ask in front of other people. There are questions we don't want to ask in the mosque. There are questions we don't want to ask our own parents. AI can be used in a way to say, I need to talk this through with someone, but, this is something private to me. So it can be used as a sounding board. But the key thing is the relationship with that technology. That it's not that you don't surrender your faculties as a human being, your God-given faculties as a human being, to a very advanced piece of machinery, a very advanced piece of computer software, because you have so much depth inside you as a human being. You have whole worlds inside of you. Remember that, we talk about this AI as this amazing piece of technology. Humans built that. Humans built that. That came from us. So if we made it, sure, that doesn't mean that it's smarter than us. In the same way, sorry, I know I keep coming back to this example of a knife, but a knife can cut a carrot. I cannot cut a carrot. If I get a carrot in my hand and I try to cut it with a knife, nothing's going to happen to the carrot. That doesn't mean that the knife is smarter than me. It doesn't mean the knife is better than me just because a knife can cut carrots and I can't cut carrots. In the same way, just because AI can quickly find and process and output information that doesn't mean the AI is smarter than a human, because a human made that AI in the same way that a human being had to make a knife, in the same way that a human being had to make a bicycle. I can't run faster than a cyclist, but that doesn't mean that a bicycle is. It just means that a human using the bicycle in the right way has an advantage. In the same way, what we're going to see in the future, this is my prediction, in the future, there are going to be three groups of people. There are going to be people who reject AI utterly. There are going to be people who embrace AI uncritically, and there's going to be a few people in the middle who are cautious about AI but learn how to use it effectively. And it's this last group of people, the middle group, who see AI as a tool and use it as such, who are going to get the most out of it, because they are going to use AI to develop themselves rather than taking the easy option, which is to let AI do all the work for them.
So basically, it all depends on how you utilize the AI tool rather than completely relying on it. Agree to that. I would like to ask the audience to share their reflection, their experiences on getting the Islamic knowledge from AI. Coming to my final question, since ICAIR has published a lot of material on the foundational principle of Islam, and you were talking about some project that ICAIR is already working on with regards to AI. Would you like to shed a light on it and let everyone know?
Sure. So, as I said, I think it's my belief that AI is one of those rare technological advances that completely change the way we do everything, on a par with the personal computer, the mobile phone, electricity. It is a piece of technology that's going to change the world around us, whether we want it to or not. So it's really important, I believe, for us as Muslims and as human beings to think really carefully about what kind of world we want to build with this tool, with this very powerful tool, this very powerful piece of technology that's been developed. So to that end, what we are doing at ICAIR is we're actually putting together a working group on artificial intelligence. And this working group consists of a number of very well-read and very aware scholars, but it also consists of subject matter experts and industry practitioners in the field of artificial intelligence. And the idea is that by bringing this body of expertise together, we can develop not just applications, but ways of thinking about artificial intelligence that are in line with Islamic principles. And by that, I mean thinking about things like the Islamic ethics of artificial intelligence, principles of AI governance from an Islamic point of view, and also, yes, looking at developing tools using artificial intelligence to help us do our work better. And so one piece of, one tool that we actually showed off a little bit at the WF conference last year was called Rijal Graph. And the idea behind this, it's a very simple idea. It's basically looking at the Hadith literature as a giant database, which it is. The Hadith literature is a giant relational database, because what you have is you have texts, which are Hadith, and then you have chains of narrators, which are the modes of transmission or the connections between these Hadiths and their sources. And the idea is if we can put this, we digitize this database of Hadith, and then we can use machine learning to identify patterns in there. Now, this isn't the same thing as saying that we're going to let a computer decide whether or not a hadith is sahih, whether or not a hadith is reliable, whether or not we should act on the content of a particular hadith. But what we can do, though, is we can use the power of computation, the power of computers, to help us do more thorough and deeper research into the hadith literature, to understand it better, to identify patterns that other people may not have noticed. And actually, there has been research done on this already, which has yielded some very interesting results in terms of patterns found in our earlier texts that were unknown to us. And this is just in its infancy. So that's one concrete application we're looking at from an Islamic research point of view. But I think the key thing is that whatever we're doing, we need to be sure that it is safe, that it is reliable, and that it is ethical. And we need to understand those three principles of safety, reliability, and morality within the Islamic worldview. And this is what this working group sets out to do. And actually, since we're here, we are about to announce something really exciting that's happening in Toronto in April, and that is the Islamic Future Symposium. So the Islamic Future Symposium is an initiative to bring together subject matter experts from the community and scholars to talk about not the challenges of today, but the challenges of tomorrow. So, in the next 10 years, what challenges are we facing, and how can we develop solutions to those challenges before they become problems? And there are three areas we're looking at in this symposium. So, one is education, one is biomedical ethics, and one is artificial intelligence. And so, we've actually got more than 40 people coming together in person and virtually to Toronto for the symposium. It's not going to be a public conference. That's going to come later in the year, and we will share some of the results of the symposium there. But it's really exciting because it's something that I don't think has been done before. Bringing together these experts to talk about the challenges of tomorrow and to actually start building a framework for us to solve those challenges, and not just to solve those challenges, but to imagine a future for the Muslim community in the age of artificial intelligence.
MashaAllah, this actually sounds exciting to me. Hassan, Sheikh, this was a brilliant conversation, and I hope it was insightful for our audience as well. Thank you so much, Sheikh, for joining,
Thank you so much for having me.
and I'll see you all in the next episode. Inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.